back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Dan and I are talking a little bit about closing projects out. Did you happen to see, I'm sure you did, some of the aerial shots of the St. Mark's driveway relocation?
I did.
Those side-by-side shots of how that project started versus how that project ended, it feels dramatic, even though it was like a relatively simple job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, simple in the fact that extending and relocating a driveway,
Yeah.
but it was in a cemetery.
Yep.
It was a lot of obstruction, a lot of sacred ground,
Yep.
and the
property boundaries, neighbors,
public access, a lot of stuff going on there.
You'd think going through a cemetery, you wouldn't have any trouble with the neighbors.
Who's going to complain?
They're not going to complain a lot.
Who's going to complain?
Who's going to complain? Turns out they complain.
Turns out people complain.
Yeah, no, that was a good shot. I mean, we've seen a lot of that lately. You know what I mean? Like Longwood, there's some amazing shots.
Yeah, Longwood
there's pieced together of what
Longwood's hard to even do the comparison.
It's hard. I mean, I've seen a couple side by. I don't. Sadly, we don't have the side by side that we want. We will someday because I know the picture exists because it exists in my head. There's a picture that I know was in the middle of the demolition of the building.
Okay.
That's really the picture I want because it's like complete, it's demo. But yeah, no, it is, the start and finish of St. Mark's was neat to see the change.
It was neat. And I think timing of it was really neat too, because the initial pictures were late winter, early spring, and everything was dead and brown. And then final product, green, looks alive, looks beautiful. And I think that a lot of times that gets lost in the process. Now, construction in general, we've talked about it a bunch on the podcast. Construction in general attracts people who love the gratification of instantly being able to turn around and seeing a hard day's work done, right?
Correct.
You do something difficult for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours, but you turn around and you see the result and you know you worked hard and you know something was accomplished.
Yep.
Hopefully it was as much or more than you wanted to accomplish. That's not always the case, but you did something tangible.
Yep.
And I think that gets lost at times, especially in the beginning of a project and the closeout of a project.
Yep. No, so the beauty of when we do a project well is we walk away and it looks like we didn't do anything, right? Which sounds, so you're taking a group of people, right? A workforce who wants to see change, wants to see delta, wants to see progress every single day. None of us really function really well when we do something and we don't see the result of it, right? And we talked about it in a lot of different ways. Like putting a roof on a house is infuriating because I had a roof when I started, right? And then I pay a lot of money and I have a roof, but I had a roof when I started. Now I acknowledge that the roof needed to be replaced, and Brian, you and I were talking about this with other things.
Yeah.
But in a perfect world, we create massive changes in virtually every facet of what that piece of ground was. And then we walk away and in 6 months, nobody knows we did anything. Yeah. Everybody forgets and the thing is just there.
I was just thinking that as you were talking, I was thinking about that, I don't know what happens inside of our brains, but looking at the final result, you a lot of the time forget what the beginning looked like. And you're like, what? I forget what this started as because the end is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, and if you take Longwood specifically, right? And so I'll take a few different examples. Longwood, you were a member at Longwood and you would go to Longwood often.
Right.
I wonder if you went to Longwood right now, you would know it was different, right? And you know what added, but I don't even know that you would remember what was there.
Yeah.
I don't know that you'd say oh, they tore 2 buildings down here. You wouldn't notice it.
Right.
Right. And if you weren't a member and you went there, you would never know that was new. You would really think it was just another section of Longwood.
Yeah.
And I look at that when we work in golf courses, right? You take Aronimink, specifically at Aronimink. I don't remember what the old pool looked like. Now, I'm not a member at Aronimink. I didn't go there, but I was there a bunch of times as we did I don't remember what the driving range looked like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know what it looks like now. Now, if you showed me a picture, I would remember. And I vaguely can think of a few things, but as humans, we adapt and we accept the reality that's in front of us and we work with that. But we also reject the change itself. At Aronimink specifically, I was out and Dylan got a call. And in an ironic twist, they were the owner was, or the involved parties were simultaneously not thrilled that some of the work was slightly behind in closing out. They were also not thrilled that we started something a day early. So we started a second project, or an additional project, and the construction entrance went in one day before it was supposed to, which I thought was good because there was rain coming and we'd be able to get it in and be less messy.
Get it stabilized.
Right, get it stabilized before all that rain, so we're not digging out a bunch of mud in a residential area. I thought it made sense. We did not alert them that we were going to do it a day sooner, but we didn't need permission. All the meetings that occurred, it's fine. But they were, so it was a dichotomy because they were both upset because it was behind and upset because it was ahead. But it got me to thinking that how much people dislike when we come in, because Ford always says we're the first ones in, right? We're the first ones. We're going to, whether we're knocking something down, cutting down trees, turning over a farm field, stripping topsoil, whatever we do, we're the first ones. We're the first ones you notice. The only way you notice anything first is if somebody puts up a fence, but usually construction entrance comes even before the fence.
Right.
That way they have some area to deploy. So it started to get me thinking as we were talking about almost like not in my backyard, right? Like nobody wants anything in their area, but it's so ironic. And we've talked about it actually on the podcast that Erin takes this attitude a lot of times. She's like, well, they're building a new house. And I'm like, we had one old house. Since then she's bought newer houses, right?
Sure.
But it's amazing to watch people upset about progress, which I can understand the upset of progress, but the only way you're not part of the problem is if you own, like in our area, like a 17th century farmhouse with the original barn and you own all the land, right? So you don't have 2 acres with a farmhouse, which would be gorgeous. And I would love to own someday.
Yep.
But you have like Beam family land. You know what I mean? Like you got 150 acres with a farmhouse in the middle of it and nobody's touched anything. Like, okay, you can complain.
Right.
Because you either kept it or you bought it.
Preserved it.
You preserved it yourself, or it is, or someone preserved it and you paid for it.
Right.
Right. And so you have like a leg to stand on, but it is funny to watch, like in that example, people that live in developments are upset about the development to clear some space to build some additional things at a golf course, which is preserving open space. Like it is taking down the trees. You do lose, they lose that pretty view of those trees that they didn't own. You know what I mean? And people lose sight of that everything that you drive on, everywhere you shop at, and everywhere you sleep at, basically, was a disruption to the people who originally lived here. And I mean, you could take it as far as you want. You know what I mean? Like you can go back to, I'm sure if you could go back in time and talk to the Indians and show them what New York looked like, they would not be very happy with what we did. You know what I mean? But there's also going to be someone, living in a development that was built 5 years ago and is going to complain about the development being built across the street. Yeah. So I feel like it's probably not now that I'm talking through it, probably not a popular conversation. It could draw we could get some questions at info@birdcons.com.
Info@birdcons.com.
Potentially with
like
Dan
and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. We could get some comments about it, but it is ironic to be on our side and watch it, to see it happen.
It is. Do you think that, and I use the word dichotomy, right? So like, and I don't know how your family is. Like my family likes to be like within reasonable proximity of like things to do and like places to eat, places to shop, whatever. But we also at times are like exactly what you're describing. Like, oh man, they like, they're a new building's going in, or they added another light because as that development took place, they realized more traffic's going to be here, and all of those things. I probably wanted access to the things. I just don't want the disruption that having access to the things causes. I think it's such a strange.
It is. I think we all struggle as like humans. We struggle with that, right? Because it's. My fondest memories are either sitting in the beach,
right,
not at a house, just on the beach, which has been the same. In essence, once you clear the boardwalk and the dunes and you're just sitting on the beach, you're sitting on the same beach that people have sat on since they got here and realized it was pretty to sit on the beach.
Sure.
And going to Maine in our cabin, which was developed. Like they built a cabin there. But it was a tiny cabin that sat on stilts. It had to be adjusted every year with water that we drew off of a stream and out of the pond. And a sewer like system that we built ourselves on the side of that hill, and nothing around you. No power, no phone, no. Even now, you don't have phone service. Nothing.
Yeah.
So it's ironic, right? Because I love the undeveloped nature of things, and in my head, I would always love to own enough land that I could, you have to drive a half a mile to get to my house, and I can't see anybody. That'd be amazing. But I don't want to have to drive an hour and a half like when I'm in Maine to be able to go to the grocery store. Like that's not fun. You gotta. So we want modern conveniences, but we don't want. It's beyond that. We don't want the inconvenience of them being built. We don't like them being built. We don't like change. As a being, we like things to stay consistent. We like consistency and predictability, and that's destabilizing when I take a giant machine in and knock down the thing that you knew existed the whole time. And in my family, when I go back to my actual, like my mom, this is, she often says the machines that we run are like what she has nightmares about. Like seeing them tear down houses and dig up the fields. That she grew up in the country,
right?
And watched, like there was this little book about they moved the little house,
right?
And she grew up in Medford, and when she moved there, 70 I don't know that it was a dirt road, but every road off of it, down there was a dirt road, and it was just all farm fields. And so she watched the development of that area of South Jersey. And didn't like it, but it's ironic because her house was built in 1950 something, 53.
Right.
So there was plenty of people who were probably unhappy when they built houses in the middle of the farm field.
50s,
yeah.
Yeah. You said something there, and like, it made me think, like, construction is not like the cleanest process.
No.
And that's got to be part of it, right? Like people see construction about to start, and they probably are like anticipating the negatives of enduring a construction zone, construction phase, period, whatever. Right? Do you think that's like, is this a mental issue? Like, is it triggering to see, like cones and construction fences going up?
I think probably to some degree, and I think what they've tried to do. I think from that is they tried two different things. I think first they put up fences.
Yeah.
And now they cover the fences, right? They have like mesh coverings,
the screens on them,
right? That say like who's building it. So it's partly advertising, partly you can't see what's going on, but partly you don't have to like look at the process, the mess. But they've also started to put pictures of what's going to be built there, And I think if you look at how a developer works in the planning stages of a process, and that's big, right? Because they have to sell the community on the finished product that no one can see, on top of the fact that you're going to take down or change whatever's there. So that's why developers make their money, is because they first have to identify a need, and then have an accounting sheet that says this could work,
right?
And then they have to deal with all the people to be able to get the community to accept the thing that someday the community would be, in a perfect world, really pleased with.
Desire, right? They would want to have there. Yeah.
Rest, yes. You know what I mean? Like it's the favorite restaurant that you go to, God didn't put it there a million years ago. Like somebody built it.
Sure.
And if you have a restaurant that's 100 years old, then it's always been there. And we're like, well, 105 years ago, somebody was probably pretty angry when somebody tried to build a restaurant next to them. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But yeah, I think that it is hard to sell because there's nothing, it's big yellow equipment, right? It's bright orange cones. It's dirt. It's mud coming out on the road. You put in a rock construction. Like there's just nothing clean about it, which is what we all like about it.
Right.
But it's also what makes people uneasy and makes them uncomfortable, especially when you get to developments. When you're talking like track houses and you're putting in, 50 to 200 houses, like what's the pressure on the school system? What's the pressure on the traffic? What's the, and that's at a high level. You can get people who are real environmentally conscious, and they're like, well, what's this do with impervious? And we have less trees, and what's the air quality going to be? And you know what I mean? There's 100 different ways that it could be a problem to build something.
Right.
But that's what people need. You know what I mean? Like, and that's, so I don't know what the right answer is to balance that,
I was thinking about this a little bit too. So, I think there's like a nostalgia component to old things a lot of times. Usually it's attached to like the memories of things that happened in those old places or with those old things or whatever it might be. But I don't know if this happens in your community or not, but in our little town, we've got a handful of buildings that are considered to be historic, right? Original from the early days that they can document of the town's development, etc. And they are just like a disaster. They're like, I don't. There's a name for it. They call it like the Cozy Corner or something like that. And at Cozy Corner, there's a historic home that is a wreck. It's boarded up.
info@bergconst.com. Brian's going to get some questions or statements.
It's boarded up. It's it's in dire need of either being demolished or repaired. But like, I think that no one necessarily wants to take the responsibility of doing that or incur the cost of restoring it to its original state or whatever that might look like. But it's also like very unpopular to consider that it should be removed.
So I got a couple things. So I on that piece of it, I think back to growing up in New Jersey, where there's a lot of towns in South Jersey. Like I said, I grew up in South Jersey, which is not what everybody perceives of Jersey. I mean, you're still going to have. I would say that South Jersey does have like a Delco, Philadelphia like attitude. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Their dialect is similar. Their attitude is similar. You know what I mean? It's just their values are similar for better or worse. But there are towns just like there are out here. Whether you're taking Main Line and you're going Wayne and out, or you're coming out here and you're going New Holland and not Lancaster, but maybe like, Leola and some other places, where you're going through these towns. And there's a few old buildings and there's the old houses. And I watched in my lifetime as they went from demolishing everything to being forced to move stuff when they wanted to, in town now the Rite Aid or whatever is closed. And I'm sure there was something there before that. But in my lifetime, they started to force people to move them. So I watched them move these huge old houses and then redo them. And right by my mom's house, there was a house, and it's a gorgeous old,
Rite Aid used to be the beer store, by the way.
Okay. All right.
Buy Right Beverage.
All right. Buy Right Beverage.
I only remember that from my days working across the street at the deli. Yeah.
So, but it's like a 1800s farmhouse, and it was not close to the road, which is unusual. It was backed off of the road my parents live on, and someone bought it, and they moved it another 150 yards back off the road. So now it's like set way back on this property that's much smaller than when it was the original farmhouse. But it cost the people, they were willing to spend the money, and I think so much of this is location based and land based. Like I don't know what that Cozy Corner house looks like and the dynamics of it, but if you take that house and you put it on the periphery of New Holland in a spot that still has 5 acres, you probably get a buyer that moves it and says, I'm going to rebuild this historic house and I'm going to, maybe Act 319 and then
that's
the taxes
true.
are less, right? But so it's so situational by land. Now, where I live currently in Chester Springs, it's a very farm horse area in Chester County with a lot of farms. So what you have is farmhouses and barns. And actually, Owen J. Roberts, the Supreme Court Justice, had pieced together a bunch of farms. And then actually, as the story was told to me, it was Luden's Cough Drops. Oh. Eventually, that family bought it and pieced together 1,500 acres of farms very close to me. And they wouldn't sell it to be developed, even though developers wanted it. And eventually they sold it to like Natural Lands Trust. And then there's a big, gigantic walking park and horse, you can ride horses through there. And then they sold off a certain amount of houses with 10-acre minimums or land with 10-acre minimums. So in my area, what you see is you can't find them. And you and I talk about it. Like I would love to find 10 to 20 acres with what is the foundation or stone walls of a barn. I don't want the farmhouse. I don't need the barn intact, but at this point I'm not the unicorn. Everybody where I live is looking for that property.
Thing. Sure.
And they're basically all gone. You have to come out further into the Berks County, Lancaster County area to try and find them. Yeah. And then decide if you're willing to be a little further from the development.
Right.
But to bring it full circle, what do you think is going to happen when the people of, and like, again, info@bergconst.com. I'm going to get it for this one. But when the people that live in Chester County and move there to be in that rural area, their kids decide they want to live in the place that's like where they grew up, they're going to move further west.
Sure.
And they're going to look for those properties where they can have those barns and those farmhouses and that land. But then the businesses will follow them. You know what I mean? And you're seeing it here now, right? Like there's development in Morgantown, and there will be continued development along 23 right near us, right from where we're sitting. They're going to build a bunch of stuff, and people are going to be like, I can't believe they're doing this. And they're going to be sitting across the street from the last thing that, your parents said, I can't believe they're doing this, which is down the street from the place that your parents said, you can't believe they're doing this, because we're going to keep doing it. And that's the part that being in construction is a little sad to me, is we can't seem to, I don't want to get to a point in, another 500 years, 250 years, where there's like, people don't even know what land looks like. You know what I mean? What would it look like to see an open field? Because when you get to some places, like, my grandfather had a farm in Kentucky, and it was desolate, just nothing. But now, being older, there's a part of me that says, like, you know how far I'd have to drive to get to desolate? You know what I mean? Like, even when you get to Lancaster County now, it's not desolate. It's not desolate. Right. It's not, now I bet if you go back to when you first moved here, right? If you had gone west and gone past Lancaster, like, you would see farms and there was these little towns, but all of a sudden there was nothing. It was just people with, hundreds to 1,000 acres of land. And so just one house, and that's what Kentucky felt like to me. It was nothing. Yeah. And as a kid, I was like, this is a crazy place to have moved from New Jersey, but now I look at it and part of me gets it. Like he went to a place where he could just wander around and, have horses and cows and grow tobacco. You know what I mean? And nobody near him. Yep, just quiet space. Yeah. Yeah. So
Ford does say that a lot too. He's like, they're not making new ground. Yeah. Right. So it's
the only thing they're not making more of.
Right. Yeah.
So, and that becomes the battle, is so the house in New Holland with no land doesn't have the same value for obvious reasons. Someone would have to want to fix the house and live in the town and deal with, people driving by your house every day.
And all the restrictions.
And all the restrictions of the historic district and the town, you know what I mean? And whereas you take that house and you put it in the middle of the woods on the side of a creek, and somebody say, okay, they're never going to let me build that creek that close to the creek again. That's and take that back to the little cabin that we had in Maine, right? Like that house was 13 feet, 15 feet from the lake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you walked out of the house and I can feel it. Like I can feel it in my feet walking barefoot on that grass and the stone. And it was 4 steps from my house steps to the edge of where it went to a rock pond. You know what I mean? It had nothing. It was just, we used to bring our play shoes there. My kids don't understand play shoes.
Play shoes.
Right? I don't know if your kids are older.
Yeah.
But my kids do not understand this. They have Nike Maxes, Air Maxes, or whatever their shoes are. There's some number that Clemis would know what it is. And they'll get them. And then Erin will clean them. She washes all their shoes so they're perfectly white again. And then they go out to play and they're immediately muddy. And I was like, why didn't you put on play shoes? And they were like, what play shoes? And I was like, find a pair of muddy, dirty, ripped up shoes.
Yeah.
And wear those.
Yeah.
Because we all know you're feral. You're going to go play in the woods and make a mess.
Right.
Why do you have to put on the white sneakers?
Ours were last year's shoes.
Mine
last year's shoes were the play shoes.
Yes. So, so the reason I say play shoes is when we would go to Maine to this lake, it's a rock lake. It's all rock on the bottom.
Yeah.
And so you'd have to wear shoes to swim in the lake. So water shoes may or may not have been invented, but we were certainly not going to buy those. So you just wore your play shoes.
Wore dirty sneakers.
You just wore dirty sneakers. And the sneakers would look brand new because the mineral content in the water was so high that it was like washing them.
That's cool.
And you would come out and you would have your play sneakers were cleaner than your actual sneakers because the water was so clean. You could see fish swim by. You know what I mean? Moose would walk 5 foot from my house. Like it was not like I drove anywhere to see moose. I just woke up, and they're not making more of that.
Right.
So it is an odd feeling to be the one that's going to be, that we work in an industry that we build everything and it needs to happen, but also know there has to be a flip side of that we have to do something to ensure that people can see what open land looks like, what a lake looks like.
Yeah. That's fair.
I don't know what you do with it.
And to some extent, it's like a little bit like national parks.
Yes.
Right. A little bit is like that sort of be like the last.
That's the last. Yeah.
the last of those types of places.
Yeah.
It's not really, but
It's not, but it feels like it. It
So,
feels
yeah.
like that. And that's, we were,
Yeah.
I was down at the beach. It's gotten to be, we're getting there. We're almost to summer. We got a few weeks left before it's
Sure.
officially summer.
Starting to feel that way too.
A week
At
left
least for
before
this week.
the
Yeah.
girls are going to be out of school. They're headed for the beach, and it's going to be what's going to be. We were on the beach, and like I said, there's nowhere I'm more peaceful than on the beach. And you just sit there, and I often think like there's people that have never seen the beach, and I've seen the Grand Canyon, but you know what I mean? Like I've never seen, like, I always want to see Wyoming, Utah, like Big
Sure.
Sky. You went out there, just to see it, or you've been in Canada to Banff, right?
Yeah.
There's places you've been that
I was thinking when as we're talking about Banff. Banff is like one of those places you get outside that little ski lodge town and like you can just drive forever on I forget what they call that highway, but I stopped at like a little pull off on the highway because I had time to go exploring and like walked through the trees and the clearest, calmest like body of water I've ever seen in my life existed. It wasn't like a tourist trap. There was no one taking pictures. There was no concession stand. It was there.
So I mean, if there's anything I want to say on this topic is people have to be reasonable about not in my backyard, because I'm in your backyard because you wanted me in your backyard, because the finance and the accounting and your behavior and your purchasing suggested this would work enough that someone put their own money out there to try and make it work, and then they're going to pay us to do it. So when you stand there and you say not in my backyard, just remember that it's first, you're in someone else's backyard, and second, we're there because the numbers say that we should be there. But at the same time, as an industry, I don't know how we balance that with some of the power that we may wield in our own decision making, our own finances, and our own government to say we don't want to build everything. You know what I mean? Like, let's leave a little here. Let's figure out a way to be reasonable and be good stewards of the land while also doing it. And I think we try to do that in trying to do projects that we deem, we always say that matter, that are worthy of our time and good for our community. You know what I mean? And try and focus on those and not just go do the same thing because we're chasing dollars. And that's probably not enough, but it's what we try and do.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. So that's probably a fair place to wrap it up. So thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope you got something from this, and we hope you come back for another episode.